My mom is drowning. Please save her. The Maid's toddler begged the billionaire on a Miami beach. A $1 billion man heard a 3-year-old's cry, and it cracked him open in ways no boardroom ever had. When a child trusts you completely, you don't forget it. You can't. Mister, please. William Hargrove had been walking the edge of the surf for 20 minutes, shoes in hand, tie loosened, the weight of a $700 million acquisition deal still pressing on his shoulders like a second skeleton. He was not a man who noticed strangers. He was not a man who slowed down for anything smaller than a market collapse. But that voice, tiny, cracked with panic, raw like a bird that had fallen from its nest too soon, it stopped him cold. He turned. She was 3 years old, maybe. Dark curls blowing wild in the salt wind. Pink sandals, one of them missing. Her face was blotchy red, her brown eyes enormous with terror, and she was running toward him with both arms stretched out wide, like he was the last solid thing on earth. Mister, my mommy, she's in the water. The little girl grabbed his wrist with both hands. Her fingers barely wrapped around it. Please. She's not coming up. William's eyes snapped to the ocean. The afternoon sun was cutting the surface into 1,000 glittering pieces. For one brutal second he saw nothing but light. Then a splash. Uneven. Desperate. A dark shape beneath the shimmering green surface, about 40 yards out, just past the break. How long? He demanded, already dropping his phone and wallet into the sand. She went under, the child cried. She said, "Stay here, Olivia." And then, William Hargrove did not think. He ran. He hit the water at full speed, barely registering the cold shock of it against his $1,000 suit. His body knew things his brain hadn't caught up to yet. He had been a competitive swimmer at Yale, though that was 12 years and a different lifetime ago. Muscle memory doesn't forget. It just waits. The current was pulling south. He corrected hard. A wave slapped him across the face like a warning. He pushed deeper, arms churning, lungs burning, scanning beneath the surface every few strokes. There. She was face down. Her dark hair fanned out in the water, like ink spreading through glass. She wasn't struggling anymore, and that was the most terrifying part. William dove under, grabbed her arm, and pulled. Getting her to the surface was harder than he expected. She was dead weight, completely limp, and the undertow wanted her. He fought it with everything he had, kicking hard, one arm around her torso, dragging them both toward the light. They broke the surface together. He gasped. She did not. "Breathe," he said out loud, though she couldn't hear him. He turned her on her back, kept her head above water, and started the brutal swim back to shore. His arms were screaming. His dress shirt was soaked and dragging like an anchor. His lungs felt like 2 collapsed paper bags. He didn't stop. Back on the beach, a small crowd had gathered. 2 lifeguards came sprinting from the North Tower. And Olivia, little Olivia in her one pink sandal, stood at the waterline with her feet getting licked by the foam. Her face was completely still, the way children look when they are too frightened to cry. William dragged the woman onto the wet sand and dropped to his knees beside her. A lifeguard shouldered past him and took over. Chest compressions, airway check, the practiced rhythm of someone trained for exactly this. William sat back on his heels, soaking wet, breathing hard, and looked at this stranger's face for the very first time. She was young. 26, 27 maybe. Plain clothes. Calloused hands. A thin silver cross on a chain tangled in her wet hair. Even unconscious, even pale from oxygen loss, her face had a quiet dignity to it, the kind that can't be bought. Olivia walked over in her single sandal and stood beside William. She didn't say a word. She just pressed her small hand against his wet forearm and held on. He didn't move either. They waited together, the billionaire and the 3-year-old, while the world held its breath. Her name was Rosa. She had survived harder things than drowning, but surviving alone has a cost that adds up quietly, invisibly, until the body finally hands you the bill all at once. William sat in the waiting room of Miami Presbyterian and realized he genuinely did not know how to leave. Her name was Rosa Delgado. William learned that from the lifeguard, who had found her phone in her shorts pocket, still in a waterproof case, still working. The lock screen photo was labeled Mommy, a gray-haired woman in a yellow kitchen somewhere far away.
Warm.
Ordinary. Beautiful in the way that real things are beautiful. Rosa Delgado. Age 27. Miami address. An apartment complex William knew was 20 minutes from the beach, in a neighborhood of small rooms, loud neighbors, and bars on the windows. No emergency contact in her phone. No insurance card in her wallet. Just a work ID from a cleaning service company, a library card, and a folded photograph of Olivia at maybe 1 year old, eyes squeezed shut in a birthday laugh. William sat in the ER waiting room, still in his soaking wetsuit. He had sent his driver away. He didn't entirely know why. Olivia sat beside him in a chair 2 sizes too big, legs dangling, clutching a juice box a nurse had brought her. She hadn't cried yet. Children sometimes do that, hold everything together with a terrifying composure while the adults fall apart around them. Is she going to be okay? Olivia asked quietly, without looking up. William looked at her. The doctors are taking care of her. She's in the right place. She works really, really hard, Olivia said almost to herself. She doesn't even sleep sometimes. A pause. She cleans people's big houses. Another pause. Then, with devastating simplicity, maybe like yours. William said nothing for a moment. Maybe, he said finally. A doctor came out 40 minutes later. Rosa had inhaled water and gone into cardiac arrest from shock and exhaustion. They had gotten her back. She was stable. Overnight monitoring, at minimum. The doctor looked at William with polite confusion, wondering what this soaking wet man in a designer suit had to do with the woman in room 7. I'm a family friend, William said. The words felt strange in his mouth. He hadn't planned them. They just came out. His assistant called twice. His board chair called once. The acquisition deal was hitting turbulence. The other side had concerns. Things needed decisions. Hargrove Capital did not pause because one man had jumped into the Atlantic Ocean on a Tuesday afternoon. He silenced his phone. He got Olivia a second juice box. When he came back, she had fallen asleep, curled sideways in the oversized chair, one hand tucked under her cheek. William sat back down beside her and stared at the ceiling. He ran Hargrove Capital. He owned 3 properties on 2 continents. He'd been on the cover of Forbes twice before 30. He had never, in his entire adult life, sat in a hospital waiting room for a stranger. He sat there for 4 more hours. When Rosa finally opened her eyes, the first thing she saw was an unfamiliar white ceiling. The second was a nurse. The third was a sleeping 3-year-old in the arms of a dark-haired man she had never seen before in her life. Except that he was holding Olivia the exact same careful way you hold something irreplaceable. Who? She started. Her voice came out like sandpaper. She's okay, the man said immediately, looking up. Dark, serious eyes. A wet suit jacket folded over the chair beside him. She's been asleep about an hour. She's perfectly fine. Rosa stared at him. Who are you?
William, he said.
Then, because that clearly wasn't enough, I was on the beach. Rosa looked at this stranger, holding her child, in a chair he had apparently sat in for hours without being asked, and felt something break open in her chest that had nothing to do with the water in her lungs. Thank you, she whispered. The smallest sentence, also the heaviest one she had ever spoken. By morning, William had made 3 calls he'd never made before in his life, and only one of them was about business. Rosa had a secret she wasn't planning to share. It had been easier to keep when she still believed she was invisible. Rosa was discharged the next morning with instructions she was already calculating how to ignore. Rest, follow-up appointment, no strenuous activity for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. She cleaned 12 houses on her weekly rotation. No backup plan. No real savings. a landlord who had already been patient in ways she didn't fully trust. William was still there when the discharge nurse came in with the paperwork. Rosa stopped when she saw him. "You don't have to, I can call a cab." "It's already taken care of," he said simply. "I don't want things taken care of," she said, her voice calm but firm. She had a quiet pride that came from years of doing hard things alone. It wasn't stubbornness. It was armor. "I don't know you." "No," he agreed. "But Olivia does." They both looked at Olivia, who was currently having a very serious conversation with a potted plant near the window. Rosa almost smiled. Almost. 7 minutes in a waiting room doesn't count as knowing someone, she said. 7 hours, he corrected quietly. It was 7 hours. That stopped her completely. She looked at him differently, then really looked at him for the first time. He was younger than she'd first assumed. Tired in a way that wasn't working-class tired, which she knew intimately. This was something else. The tired of a person who has everything and still can't rest. She let him drive them home. In the car, a black SUV, clean and quiet and absurdly comfortable, Olivia immediately climbed into the space between the front seats and asked William what his favorite color was. "Blue," he said. "Mine is purple," Olivia said gravely. "But I also like orange. Can you like two?" "Yes. I think you can like as many as you want." Rosa watched this exchange in the side mirror and felt completely off balance. She learned later from her neighbor Cynthia, who could Google anyone in under 30 seconds, that William Hargrove was not just some wealthy man who happened to be at the beach. He was the William Hargrove. Hargrove Capital, the acquisitions that changed skylines. The man Forbes had called the youngest serious player in East Coast private equity. "He drove you home?" Cynthia grabbed Rosa's arm. "Personally? In the car?" "Yes." "And stayed at the hospital all night?" "Yes." "Rosa." Cynthia's eyes went wide. That man has people whose entire job is to handle things, so he never has to handle anything himself. Rosa understood. She just didn't know what to do with the understanding. She didn't call him. She put his card in the drawer where she kept important papers, Olivia's birth certificate, her green card, her mother's last letter, and told herself that was that. He called her on Thursday. "I want to make sure you're actually resting," he said. "I am," she said. A lie. She had already reorganized her client schedule and was planning to go back Monday. "You're lying," he said. She was so startled she laughed, a real laugh, surprised completely out of her. "How could you possibly know that?" "Because you have the voice of someone who has been taking care of everything and everyone for so long that the idea of rest feels like failure," he said. "I recognize it. It's the same voice I have." A silence settled between them, surprisingly comfortable. "I have to work," she said, quietly, honestly. "I know," he said. "That's why I'm calling." There are people who change the temperature of a room just by being in it. William had always assumed he was one of them. He never expected to meet another. Rosa had been alone so long that kindness from a stranger felt more suspicious than cruelty. That's what surviving does to you. It rewires everything. Over the next 2 weeks, a pattern formed that neither of them explicitly agreed to. William arranged for Rosa's clients to be covered, anonymously, through her cleaning company, framed as a complimentary coverage program he quietly funded with one phone call. Rosa accepted it because she had no real choice. She suspected it was him. She didn't confirm the suspicion because she wasn't sure what she'd do with the confirmation. He stopped by on Saturday with groceries. Not extravagant ones. Not caviar and imported cheese. Real groceries, the right ones. Rice and beans. Olivia's specific brand of apple juice. Fresh tomatoes. The kind of bread you could make real toast with. He had apparently asked Olivia on the phone what they actually needed. Rosa answered the door and stared at the bags. "You can't keep doing this," she said. "You're recovering from nearly drowning," he said. "I haven't done anything that requires this level of protest. You're doing too much." "I'm bringing groceries." People do this for each other. It's called being a person. She stepped aside and let him in. Her apartment was small and fiercely clean, the way homes are when maintained by someone who takes pride in the only things they can fully control. Olivia's drawings covered the refrigerator, taped in a neat grid. Succulents on the windowsill. A shelf of paperback novels with broken spines from rereading. A framed photo of a woman who must have been Rose's mother, holding baby Olivia in that yellow kitchen, far away. William stood in her living room and felt something he hadn't felt in his own glass and steel penthouse in years. The sense of a life actually being lived. Olivia came running out of the bedroom with a drawing she had made specifically for him, a blue person, William, a purple person, Olivia, and a smaller figure she identified as Mommy, all holding hands on a yellow beach. He accepted it with more seriousness than he'd given the last 3 board presentations. "This is excellent work," he told her. "I know," she said. Over dinner that evening, Olivia had insisted he stay, and Rosa hadn't had the heart to say no to Olivia. They talked. Really talked. The way people do, when they're not performing for each other yet. Rosa had grown up in Colombia, moved to Miami at 19 with her mother's blessing and a cousin's phone number. The cousin moved 6 months later. She stayed because going back felt like admitting something she wasn't ready to admit. She learned English from library books, reality TV, and the clients who mostly talked at her rather than to her. Olivia's father had been a kind man who made a bad choice and then made a worse one by disappearing. She said this without bitterness. Just accuracy. "And you?" she asked. "Do you have family here?" William was quiet for a moment. "My parents are in Connecticut. We're civil. My father thinks I should have gone into law. My mother thinks I work too much." A pause. "My mother is right. Why do you?" Rosa asked. "Because when I'm working," he said carefully, "I don't have to think about anything else." Rosa looked at him for a long moment. "That's not a reason. That's an escape." He didn't argue. Later, Olivia crashed asleep on the couch. William helped Rosa wash the dishes. A small, domestic, completely ordinary act that felt enormous somehow. They stood at the sink in comfortable silence, and it was the most at peace William had felt in longer than he could honestly remember. "You're different than I expected," Rosa said finally, handing him a rinsed cup. "Different from what?" "From the kind of man you are." He dried the cup carefully. "What kind of man did you expect?" "The kind who saves someone and then goes back to his life and tells the story at parties," she said. No judgment. Just honesty. "I thought about it," he admitted. "What stopped you?" He looked across the kitchen at the small sleeping shape of Olivia on the couch, her little fist curled under her chin. "She grabbed my wrist," he said quietly. "And she trusted me completely."
Just like that.
No reason. No history. Just trust. He paused. "You don't forget that. You can't." Rosa looked down at the dish in her hands. Something moved across her face that she didn't let turn into words. But he saw it. The world doesn't like it when people stand where they're not supposed to stand. Someone always has to point it out. Everything was going too well, and Rosa knew better than to trust too well. It had a habit of costing her everything. It was William's assistant Maya who found out first. Maya was efficient, loyal, and dangerously good at her job, which meant she noticed things. She noticed the driver logs. She noticed the grocery run that didn't match any company account. She noticed that her meticulously scheduled boss had been taking 3-hour gaps in his calendar labeled simply personal, something that had never, in 4 years, happened before. She didn't say anything to William. She said something to the board chair. Gerald Holt was 64 years old and had been managing the reputations of wealthy men since before William was born. He called on a Wednesday. "I've heard you've been spending time with a woman," Gerald said, in the tone of a man who considers other people's lives a spreadsheet to be optimized. "That's not your business, Gerald." "William." A loaded pause. "She's a cleaning woman." "She's a person," William said. His voice went very quiet. "Be careful with the next thing you say." Gerald was not careful. He said it anyway, something about optics. Something about the acquisition deal. Something about how William's image was an asset to the company, and how this looked, and how people who wanted to cause damage could cause damage, and how a man in his position needed to. William ended the call. He sat in his office at the top of the Hargrove Capitol building and looked out at Miami glittering in the afternoon sun. He had built all of this, fought for every floor of it. And right now, from up here, it felt like the loneliest view on earth. He called Rosa. She picked up on the second ring. Olivia was singing something off-key in the background. "Can I come over tonight?" he asked. A pause. "Is everything okay?" He stopped. Started again. "I just want to be somewhere that feels real." A longer pause. "I'll save you some rice," she said. But Gerald hadn't finished. By Friday, a gossip column had a small blind item. Nothing named, nothing confirmed, but specific enough to make Rosa's stomach drop when her neighbor Cynthia texted it to her with 17 question marks. Which high-profile finance executive has been making very unexecutive moves lately, trading boardroom lunches for home-cooked meals in a very different part of Miami? Rosa stared at her phone for a long time. She thought about what this meant for William, the headlines, the jokes, the insinuations. She thought about what it meant for her, being looked at, being talked about, being reduced to a punchline in someone else's story. She thought about Olivia, who was 3 years old and trusted the world completely and deserved a mother who protected her from it. And she made a decision. When William knocked on her door that Friday evening, she opened it, but she didn't step aside. "I think you should stop coming here," she said. He went still. "Why?" "Because this isn't your world, and I'm not your project," she said. Her voice was steady, armor fully back in place. "And whatever this is, it doesn't have a good ending for me. Or for Olivia." "Rosa, you saved my life," she said. "I will never stop being grateful for that. But gratitude isn't a foundation. And pity definitely isn't." That landed hard. She saw it on his face. "You think that's what this is," he said quietly. "Pity. I think you're a good man who did a good thing and got caught up in it. And I think eventually your real life is going to call you back. It already is, isn't it?" She looked at him directly. "I'd rather end this cleanly than let Olivia get more attached to someone who's going to disappear." William stood in the doorway for a long moment. He didn't argue. He didn't push. He just said, "She's not the only one who's attached." Then he walked away. That night, after Olivia was asleep, Rosa sat on the kitchen floor with her back against the cabinet, the way she used to sit in the hard years, when the apartment felt too big and too small at the same time, and let herself feel all of it. The loneliness, the longing, the terrifying, inconvenient truth of what she actually felt. She was not a woman who cried easily. She cried. The most important rescues don't happen in the ocean. They happen in the quiet moments when someone chooses, despite every reasonable reason not to stay. This is the chapter where two people finally stop running in opposite directions. And a 3-year-old, as usual, sees it first. 3 weeks passed. William threw himself back into Hargrove Capitol with the kind of focus that impressed everyone around him and satisfied absolutely no one, including himself. He closed the acquisition deal. Gerald shook his hand. Maya brought champagne to the conference room. He smiled. He said the right things. He went home to his penthouse and stood at the floor-to-ceiling window and looked at the ocean from far away, from safe, from behind glass, and felt nothing but the particular emptiness of a person who has won something that no longer feels worth winning. He thought about a kitchen with succulents on the windowsill. He thought about a shelf of reread paperbacks. He thought about a 3-year-old who believed you could like as many colors as you wanted. He thought about a woman who looked him in the eye and told him the truth even when the truth cost her something. He picked up his phone, put it down, picked it up again. Rosa, meanwhile, was doing what she always did. Working, head down, hands busy, keeping the world running for other people while her own inner world did something complicated and quiet that she didn't have the luxury of stopping to examine. until Olivia examined it for her. One evening, Olivia came into the kitchen while Rosa was making dinner and placed something on the counter with great ceremony. It was a drawing newer than the others. A blue person standing alone on a yellow beach. No purple person. No mommy. That's William, Olivia said. He's by himself. Rosa looked at the drawing. Okay, baby. He seems sad, Olivia said, with the terrifying perceptiveness of very young children. In my drawing. Drawings don't have feelings. Mine do, Olivia said firmly. Then, do you miss him? Rosa stirred the pot. Didn't answer. Mommy. Yes, Rosa said finally. Quietly. To the pot. Yes, I do. Then, why don't you call him? Because it's complicated. Olivia considered this for a very serious 3-year-old moment. Is it complicated? Or is it scary? Rosa stopped stirring. She looked at her daughter. This small, fearless, impossible person who had run toward a total stranger on a beach and grabbed his wrist and trusted him completely, and felt something shift in her chest like a door coming unstuck from a frame. Is it complicated? Or is it scary? She called him that night, after Olivia was asleep. He picked up before the second ring. Neither of them said anything for a long second. Then Rosa said, I was wrong. Not about everything, but about the pity part.
I was wrong about that.
A pause. Yeah, he said. His voice was rough. You were. I'm not easy, she said. I come with a 3-year-old who will monopolize all your attention and ask you 40 questions about your favorite color. I know. And I'm not going to change who I am or what my life looks like because it's inconvenient for someone's image. I would never ask you to. And if you disappear, her voice got quieter but steadier. Not from me. I can handle that. But from her, I will never forgive you. I want you to understand that going in. I understand. Do you? Rosa. His voice was very calm and very certain. I jumped into the Atlantic Ocean in a $1,000 suit because a 3-year-old grabbed my wrist. I think you know by now that I don't scare easy. She laughed. A real one. The surprised kind. He came over the next afternoon. Olivia opened the door before he even knocked. She had been watching from the window, and grabbed his hand and pulled him inside with the complete confidence of a child who had never once doubted this outcome. I knew you'd come back, she announced. Did you? William said.
Yes.
Because Mommy missed you. And also because you forgot your blue juice box last time. Rosa, from the kitchen doorway, pressed her hand over her mouth. William caught her eye over Olivia's head. She shook her head slowly, helpless, laughing.
Real.
He smiled, and it was not the Forbes cover smile, not the boardroom smile, not the smile of a man performing success. It was the smile of a person who has walked back into the right room and knows it. Later, when Olivia was in bed and the dishes were done, and they were sitting on Rosa's small balcony with a Miami night stretched out around them, warm and loud and lit up and alive, William looked at his hands for a moment. I want to say something, and I don't want you to argue with me until I finish, he said. Okay. I have spent 10 years building things, he said.
Companies. Deals.
A reputation. A skyline, technically. And I thought that was the point, to build things that outlast you. He paused. But I walked into your kitchen and there were drawings on the refrigerator and a 3-year-old who wanted to know if you could like 2 colors at once. And I realized I hadn't built anything that felt like that. Like it mattered to an actual human being who wasn't calculating what I was worth. Rosa was quiet. I'm not saying I have this figured out, he continued. I'm not saying I know how this works. I'm saying, he looked at her directly. I don't want to be the blue person standing alone on the beach. Not anymore. The city hummed below them. Somewhere down the street, someone was playing music. The ocean was out there in the dark, patient, enormous, indifferent. The same water that had nearly taken her and instead had started something neither of them had a word for yet. Rosa looked at this man, 34 years old, stupidly successful, quietly broken in the specific way that very driven people get broken, and thought about a morning 3 weeks ago when she woke up in a hospital room, and the first thing she saw was her daughter safe in a stranger's arms. She thought about what it means to be saved, and what it means to save someone back. "You know," she said softly, "Olivia was the one who found you. On that beach. She chose you."
Yeah.
"She has good judgment," Rosa said. "For a 3-year-old. William turned to look at her. "The best I've ever encountered." A pause. "Okay," Rosa said. "Okay. Okay." She looked out at the ocean. "We figure it out as we go. No promises we can't keep. No pretending it's simple. But, okay." He let out a breath he'd been holding for 3 weeks. "Okay," he said. Olivia found them still on the balcony an hour later. She had climbed out of bed in her pajamas with the absolute authority of a child who does not recognize bedtime as a real concept. She looked at William. She looked at her mother. She looked at them together. Then she climbed onto the chair between them, pulled both their arms around her, and closed her eyes with the complete satisfaction of someone whose plan had worked perfectly. "I knew," she murmured, already half asleep. "I knew I picked the right mister." William looked at Rosa over the top of Olivia's curly head. Rosa looked back at him. Neither of them said anything. They didn't have to. Some rescues happen in the ocean. Some happen in a kitchen at a sink. Some happen on a balcony in the dark. And some, the most important ones, happen when a 3-year-old grabs a stranger's wrist and says please, and the stranger is brave enough to not let go. But this is only where the story begins. What happens next will change everything. Secrets will be revealed. Lives will be shattered. And love will be tested in ways you never saw coming. If you want to see part 2, here's all you have to do. Backhand index pointing right, like this video. It tells us you want more backhand index pointing right. Subscribe and hit the bell, so part 2 finds you the moment it drops backhand index pointing right. Comment part 2 below, so we know you're ready. Every like, every comment, every subscribe tells us keep going. Keep telling these stories.